In case you have missed watching the previous videos, we have compiled a selection of our videos for you. Whether you're looking for something to watch while you're bored, want something to play in the background, or are curious to learn more about Stranger Teas, you've come to the right place. Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification button so you know when to come back and watch our videos. For those of you who have already watched our videos, please leave the timestamps of the videos you would recommend to others in the comments section. Let's get started. Story 1. In the 7th grade, me and a friend went back to our old elementary school in May after school to find some 4th and 5th graders who had climbed onto the roof. Being the curious 7th graders we went up on the roof with them by climbing on top of a power box. The elementary school was right next to a huge main road, so on most parts of the roof you could be seen from that road. There were 5 of us, and we had explored just about every part of the roof except for the gymnasium roof where my friend said he was thirsty. I had $1, so I rode my bike to the party store just down the street. When I came riding back up the road to the school, I saw a group of 2 police officers talking to my friend. Turned around and went home. I know one of my friends went down to the station, but I don't know about the other 3. My friends weren't upset with me for leaving. They better not be. Look, if you're with your friends and all but 1 or 2 of you is caught, you do not hold it against those who got away or turn them in. Be it skill or luck, you rejoice in anyone spared punishment, or else you're just being a dink. Story 2. Oh crap, reading these stories is really jarring my memory, or maybe these beers are kicking in, and just remembering another happening, only this time no one was arrested. So back in high school, again, myself and 2 of my friends were chilling by this river. We call it the river, but it was more of a stream behind a bunch of houses, drinking and doing coke. After finishing a few lines and a shared Gatorade bottle of something, probably vodka mixed with a little Gatorade now that I think of it, we decided to start walking around. All of a sudden we see flashing lights. I don't do well around cops usually, my last story being the only exception really. And my heart's already beating pretty fast, this time probably from a mix of anxiety and the white fluffy druggie. So we dipped. Suddenly I saw this sort of sewer drain sort of thing and said something like, "Crap, let's hide in there," so we crawled in. We cramped together in this confined drain sort of thing for about 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Plus side, got some teas in my face. Anyway, I eventually slid out to check to see if anyone's still there. I don't hear sirens, and I don't see any more people, so we all get out and relax back at one of the girls' houses for a beer and a few bowls. Well, to be fair, in that story you were not the only one to get away, but still, good story. Not that I condone the use of drugs, but I do condone good stories. Story 3. Not me, but a close friend of mine. Freshman year at university, we're all celebrating a friend's birthday party in my dorm room when an RA overhears me shushing everyone and decides to investigate. The whole dorm room stank of booze, so he came in, took down names, had us empty everything out, etc., etc. Fast forward to a few weeks later, and everyone who was there is getting emails about their upcoming student judicial hearing. All except one. We'll call him Jamie Lannister. So Jamie reveals to us that the RA apparently wrote down the wrong name for him, a miracle since he checked most of our IDs when he was taking names. And instead of having the name Jamie Lannister, it's something more like James Bannister. Cue a change of story on all of our parts, and at our judicial hearing, each one of us was asked about this James Bannister, who they weren't able to track down. We respond with an already agreed upon story that he was some weird dude tangentially related to our group who more or less followed us up to my room, and that none of us were familiar with his last name. The effer got off scot-free. Story 4. Last night I was playing World of Warcraft, doing mythic dungeons with 2 guildmates and a couple of pugs. We were in Shadow Moon Burial Grounds. I was tanking on my main pally tank, and the run was going pretty smooth until we got to the last boss. I was on voice chat with my 2 guildmates, and I told them to move far away when the boss spawns fire and to watch the frontal cone when we have to group up for Ritual of Bones. Long story short, everybody but me did everything wrong and died like bees. So I'm sitting there with the boss at 35% health, thinking I should probably just go kill myself so we can get a fresh start on the boss, but I decide to be stubborn instead. I engage in full bad A mode, played everything perfectly, and was somehow managing to out-heal the damage the boss was doing to me. When the first ritual started, I just ran through it with bubbles. For the second and last ritual, I popped all my remaining CDs and sprinted through it while chugging a health potion. About 3 minutes after the rest of the group died, I finished off the boss solo. One of the DPS claims he was going to suck my D. It was pretty intense. Were stories like this not the point of this post? God, I hope not. Look, I game. I'm a full-fledged dork and a half, and I support you having fun with your friends. But the only way I would read a whole thread like that is if it were April 1st. Even then, probably not. Story 5. I was the only one to get away from my hometown. Even the kids who went to college out of state moved right back. I was one of 4 in my class who took early graduation, graduated high school with diploma in hand at the end of January instead of June, even though due to how the school changed class scheduling, like 90% of the senior class was eligible. We went from a possible 7 credits a school year to a possible 10. The change happened in our junior year, so since we all came in under the old schedule, we still only needed the lower credits to graduate. I remember on my last day in January, everyone was talking in the homeroom like, "Did you take early grad? No? I wish I did, but I'd miss everyone." This was the school, town, teachers, jobs, people they said they utterly detested and couldn't wait to get away from. They're all still there now with apartments and kids, still saying how much they hate it and wish they could move away. Story 6. When I was in high school, we had a Guitar Hero tournament. After the whole ordeal was over, nobody made us actually get rid of the setup that was in an unused room. This led to a bunch of us always leaving to go to the bathroom and just going to play Guitar Hero. Eventually, it evolved into 5 to 6 box PlayStation setups in the room. One day, the principal finally walks in this room and there are upwards of 30 people in there playing video games. He immediately marches us all to the office. I storm out the door to go first with a plan that should never work. I walk up to the office door, pull it back, and hold it for everyone, and then just shut the door behind them and walk off. Somehow nobody noticed that I never went in and I never got in trouble. Nobody else got in real serious trouble, just some detentions, but still hilarious. Story 7. This is a little different than what OP asked for, but it mostly fits. I was the one to get away with a very embarrassing event. There I was sitting in my 9th grade French 1 class just zoning out. At the time I was extremely shy and would die from even the smallest embarrassment. What then happened was just a slight adjustment back into my seat as I'd been leaning forward and bam, the loudest effing fart possible. It was heard by absolutely everyone, 32 to 35 kids, but fortunately it was very abrupt and quick. Since the fart didn't drone on and everyone was still stunned, I just froze knowing that I would soon be caught. I could even feel my face flush bright red, which should have been obvious that it was me who dealt with it. Surprisingly, like a miracle from God himself, the few students around me immediately began blaming each other while everyone else just laughed. No one pointed at me. One girl says, "Ew, that was not me." Another guy says, "Hey, if it was me, then I would just own up to it." He then turns to me and, no crap, asks, "Who was the one that did it? You tell us." I just kind of shrugged my shoulders until the teacher soon calmed down the class. To this day, I still cannot believe how no one thought I did it. Story 8. Hotboxing a truck with some friends of a friend senior year in an empty parking lot of some park, already high as F, when suddenly the Taco Bell we had gorged on earlier is going ape crap in my bowels, and holy crap, I need a bathroom. I ran/stumbled my way to the public restroom on the other side of the parking lot. I finished, and as I'm about to walk out, I see what looks like red lights illuminating the entrance. I start losing my crap. I know it's cops and everyone's high as F. At this point, I knew A, my friends are effed, B, what the F should I do? I retreated in the farthest stall and texted my parents saying I was crashing at some dude's house. Ended up falling asleep in the stall. Woke up the next morning and got another friend to pick me up. Got away, no one ratted me out, and that's how Taco Bell simultaneously destroyed and saved my butt at the same time. Story 9. I went to a private high school and was part of a group of about 20 people who knew about a tent hidden in the woods behind our school. People would go there and do it after school, smoke pot, and do hood rat crap. Someone got in trouble and ratted out all of us as an attempt to lessen her punishment. Apparently, she was going to be expelled, and on the last day before finals, we all got called down to the detention room, and the dean told us that they had found drug paraphernalia and weapons, airsoft pistols, and made us all write down everything we know about the tent and who we've seen at the tent. 19 people ratted out everyone in that room, including themselves, and were given pretty harsh punishments. 3 were expelled, some were suspended into the next year, and the rest got demerits. I wrote down, I have no idea what you're talking about. Went and talked to the deans and said the same thing and was off the hook. I'm certain my name was on every list, and I'm sure they wanted to nail me, but I denied, and I guess they were satisfied with 19 people giving themselves up. Story 10. I turned up in the school washroom with my friends with the lights off and music blasting out. People were hanging off the stalls and making as much noise as possible. Teacher comes in and writes our names down. She gets to me and asks, have I already written your name? And I say yes and walk away. Friends got detention. Apparently someone cracked the mirror in the washroom and no one fessed up, so they all went down together. Story 12. High school party, one of my first. I was wasted, throwing up in the basement bathroom when the cops arrived. Eventually, they were let inside and stormed into the basement where everyone was hiding loudly with the lights off, with their flashlights beaming down into the dark. I want to say there were at least 30 people rounded up into the living room where they started calling parents. The host of the party saw me sitting on the mantel, having accepted my fate. She knew my dad would literally whoop my butt and sent me out the window. I knocked over the grill on my way out and walked around the back of the house, through a few backyards, and to the neighborhood pool where I cuddled with some bushes for a few hours. When I saw the last cop finally leave, I sprinted back to the house and knocked on the door to be let in, scaring the crap out of the 3 survivors. A few dozen people were charged with underage drinking. Hey, huge props to the host for doing what they could to help you escape abusive punishment. That's a damned solid move, and I hope you bought that person some pizza or something as thanks. Story 12. High school party, one of my first. I was wasted, throwing up in the basement bathroom when the cops arrived. Eventually, they were let inside and stormed into the basement where everyone was hiding loudly with the lights off, with their flashlights beaming down into the dark. I want to say there were at least 30 people rounded up into the living room where they started calling parents. The host of the party saw me sitting on the mantel, having accepted my fate. She knew my dad would literally whoop my butt and sent me out the window. I knocked over the grill on my way out and walked around the back of the house, through a few backyards, and to the neighborhood pool where I cuddled with some bushes for a few hours. When I saw the last cop finally leave, I sprinted back to the house and knocked on the door to be let in, scaring the crap out of the 3 survivors. A few dozen people were charged with underage drinking. Hey, huge props to the host for doing what they could to help you escape abusive punishment. That's a damned solid move, and I hope you bought that person some pizza or something as thanks. Story 13. As a teen, I worked at a retail shop with a bunch of other teens. We would regularly fill carts with merchandise and walk them out the front door when management was on break. Cases of beer, cartons of cigarettes, perfume, cologne, batteries, compact discs, Dr. Scholl's, you name it, we stole it. I got promoted from cashier to customer service counter. A woman came in one day with a severe bee face on. I said something along the lines of, "You don't look like you've had a positive shopping experience," or some BS. She went off on me. Turns out the bee face was her normal face, and I said the same thing to her every time she came. I didn't remember her was high most of the time into the store. That was my 3rd strike, and I got fired on the spot. 1 week later, all of my friends were arrested for theft. They had installed hidden cameras throughout and busted everyone except me. Story 14. I was gambling in Vegas on a Friday with a friend's bachelor party coming up the next day. Playing blackjack mostly just killed time waiting for dinner, but the table was on fire. It was a full table shortly after I sat down. I played for a couple hours and the table was all up on money anywhere from $50,000 to $800. The $800 was me. Everyone else was literally up at least 10 grand. It's about 20 minutes before I'm supposed to meet up with someone, so I called it and head back to my room so I can shower and change for the night. Head out for dinner and have a good night. The next morning, my buddies call me down to the lobby to meet up. As I get down there, out of sheer coincidence, they are talking to the dealer who was at the table when I left. She says, "There he is," and points at me. Friends are like, "No crap?" Turns out I was the only one that walked away from that table with $1 to my name. See, if that was me, I would have bailed out the moment I was like $20 up. I am not a gambler, and with that attitude, I am confident I never will be. Story 15. My first house party in college was on Halloween my freshman year. Naturally, everyone was in costume and about half the people were underage. I wasn't drinking, but my friends were. Around midnight, an older guy, 40s, walks in dressed as a cop. Me, being one of the few sobers at the party, realized he was an actual cop. I tried to convince my friends to leave, but they all said the guy was just in a costume, so I left on my own. I walked right past the cop, told him to have a good night, and walked home. I found out the next day all of my friends got tickets for underage drinking. Story 16. It was a night out in college just after the club, and loads of people are milling about in the streets drunk as F. After a few drinks, I always get hungry, so I grab one of my friends to go get a pizza, but the 4 other lads I was with wanted to go home, so they walked down the street to get a taxi. After gorging on some sweet pizza, I called my friends to find out where they headed to find out that they were in an ambulance. As they were getting into the taxi, they got jumped by 2 rough locals, wallets stolen, and one got bottled across the head, 2 teeth knocked out, and another stabbed from ear to chin. 2 inches lower and he'd be dead. Court case happening in a few weeks, and the only reason I'm not involved or injured is because I'm always hungry. Story 17. This one is pretty scary, actually. I'm a special contractor for the military, mostly consultation work, and often get posted to forward bases and carriers and such. I can't really divulge what I do. Anyway, I get posted to this large force-projecting carrier in the Cold War, think South China Sea, when it gets attacked by these people and small craft in the littoral zone. Which isn't really much of a threat because we have huge guns, right? Wrong. These a-holes were packing special ordnance or something, and we only just realized once they got too close to use our anti-ship weapons. Of course, me being a lowly consultant, I don't have any cut-through to the captain because he's actually an 08 and thinks he knows effing everything. Apparently, I'm the only one who thinks it would be a good idea to launch smaller craft that can interdict them and keep them at appropriate range. I muster up a few good dudes and engage these rebels ship to ship. In the meantime, these guys managed to blow up the station somehow, and only I got away and my tie advanced. Had to warp back to the Empire like a peasant. Second worst day of my career, although I did get promoted after that. God damn it, I got Star Wars'd. I knew this person sounded like they were full of crap. I just didn't realize the crap was Star Wars. Story 18. Not me, but a friend was at a house party my senior year of high school. I was on a date that night, so I didn't go. The cops showed up and no one could leave because there were cops outside both the front and back doors. 4 of my friends ran into the basement and 3 of them hid under the stairs while my other friends hid in the corner. The cops came downstairs, looked right past my friend hiding solo, and brought the 3 underneath the stairs up to where they were ticketing everyone. To top it off, my buddy waited like an hour and walked upstairs and the whole place was empty. The house owner had to go down to the station, so he did some dishes and crashed on the couch. Story 19. I was underage at a party in college where about 200 people were in a basement with only one exit. The cops came and made everyone leave one by one and take a breathalyzer on the way out. I had about 5 or 6 drinks by this point, and they were giving tickets to anyone underage that blew over maybe a .02. Me and one buddy went all the way to the back of the basement where there was a sink and chugged water and peed in the corner for the roughly 2 hours it took to breathalyze everyone. We were some of the last people to leave and had both sobered up enough that we blew 0 on the breathalyzer and just drove home. Story 20. Party got busted when I was in college. Depends on the cops and usually the time of year. They will generally just tell everyone to go home and only hand out MIPs to anyone who is belligerently drunk or carrying alcohol who's under 21. Well, drunk me thought it was a brilliant idea to walk out the back with my beer, and I wasn't 21. Well, cops aren't stupid and had someone standing by the back door. I walk out and the cop asks me, "Are you 21?" I said, "Do you think I would be carrying this if I wasn't?" And he goes, "All right, get out of here." I guess this was one of the parties where they handed out MIPs to everyone. I think if I'd been running or something, things would have gone differently, but just walking like nothing was going on, they didn't even card me. Boy, a lot of these are just about people getting past the cops while drinking underage at parties. I'm almost starting to miss the World of Warcraft story. No, I'm not. Story 21. Went to a house party in high school. The cops showed up and were citing people for underage drinking, so I hid my beer in my jacket before this officer swaggered towards me. We're talking about some BS, and I'm lying my butt off saying I was just seeing what was going on, coming home from some made-up extracurricular activity, blah, blah, blah. He probably knew I was drunk, but I was being polite and was held together better than my other belligerent peers. In the midst of our conversation, my beer drops out of my jacket at our feet. F. Instead of panicking, I played dumb and just looked around with a confused expression and exclaimed something like, "Whoa, where the heck did that come from?" The officer saw this dude acting like a drunk jackass a few yards away from us and started yelling and charging after him. I dipped and walked home. Apparently, everyone got effed by the police that night. Story 22. I was shooting up H in the parking lot of a macaroni grill with some other junkies, and 2 cop cars rolled up right after I injected it all. I tossed the needle under the seat and the cops came up and told us all to get out of the car and sit down on the curb. I told the cop they were just my ride home. The junkies I was with all started yelling and swearing at the cops, saying I was full of crap and I had dope on me. I didn't have a sheet on me, and they did so they got thrown in the back of the cruiser. Cops patted me down and found my wallet and some string cheese. The cop told me I was free to go since I didn't have a sheet on me. I was also polite to the officer, unlike my dip crap friends. Junkies went to jail, and I got an Uber home. Story 23. I have a great story. It is actually my mom's story, though. She was on a missionary trip with members of her church. They went down to Mexico to an extremely poor village and did a bunch of stuff, including building a schoolhouse, giving out shoes, teaching children how to do whatever, etc. The people invited all the missionaries to come eat with them. My mom was the only one who accepted their offer. The rest of the missionaries were too scared to eat their dirty food and instead ate food that they bought with them in their coolers and RV fridge and whatnot. My mom tried to convince a few to eat the food that was offered. It was all these people who had to pay back anyone. But in the end, they all declined. My mom ate some truly amazing Mexican food that night, and by morning, the entire missionary group besides my mom was sick with food poisoning. If you're going to do missionary work with another culture, you better be prepared to experience what that culture has to offer you. Don't go places just to push your stuff on them. I have other thoughts on this, but I'll keep those to myself. Story 24. As a teenager, we heard there was going to be a large keg party in the neighboring town, so me and 2 of my buddies headed over there. Several hundred people showed up in a large sand pit with only one exit. Fortunately, one of my 2 buddies carried a police scanner and was able to hear the call out and the police responding to the scene. Since there was only one way in and out of the place, my 2 friends and I climbed up a 75-foot wall of wet sand to get up out of the place, and watched from the woods as 200 or so people got arrested by 30 cops for underage drinking. Walked away without a scratch. Story 25. My school used to have a trip every year, and in 6th grade we went to Washington, D.C. to learn about U.S. history. I've always been known as a pretty quiet guy, and I'd never gotten in trouble. On the first day of the trip, I was going up to the hotel rooms with 5 other people, and 2 kids would stop the elevator and jump out and jump back in at every single floor. There was a kid with anger management issues in the elevator, and he started getting really agitated. He ended up punching the 2 people who were elevator hopping, and the 2 other people in the elevator tried to intervene while I was just standing in the back. They all got their free time for the rest of the trip taken away, and the kid who started the fight got sent home while no one even remembered I was in the elevator. Story 1. He's married, has 2 fabulous kids. He and his wife own a ranch where it looks gorgeous. I'm divorced, unemployed, trying to restart my life in my mid-40s, and it's hard. So, for those who are all, he might be miserable, you never know, I actually keep in good touch with him and can confirm he is happy. I'm not bitter. Well, I sometimes have waves of bitterness, but not at him, just at life in general. And I'm holding myself together. Just remember, you're only seeing the highlight reel of his life. Hang in there. Story 2. She was an exchange student who I was absolutely over the moon for. We had a few dates, and I think she was fairly sweet to me, but didn't want to get too involved with someone who would soon be on the other side of the world from her. And I think a little bit of cultural stigma at play as well. Now she's a professional athlete of some note. I think she competes with her national team. Naturally, I still have vague notions of us getting back together someday. Oh man, I remember having a huge crush on an exchange student. Mika from Italy, wherever you are, it never would have worked between us, but you were a lot of fun. Hope you're doing well and as big of a firecracker as ever. Story 3. She sent me a Facebook message recently when I updated my relationship status with my current girlfriend, saying she's like me since high school. We're 25 now. I haven't lived in my hometown in 3 years and am in a very happy relationship now. Maybe you should have told me this when I was really into you and we went to school together. But what do I know? Obviously, break up with your current girlfriend and go out with a girl who liked you back in high school and didn't decide to tell you till 7 years after you graduated. I hear the makings of the new Hallmark Christmas movie. Story 4. He's married to his high school girlfriend. When I was a sophomore, he was a senior, and I wrote him a note and asked him out to get coffee. He was so polite about turning me down. Todd, you beautiful man, if you're reading this, hi, and thanks for not crushing a 16-year-old to pieces. Edit. For everyone asking, he told me he was very flattered I had asked him on a date and politely declined because he was in love with his girlfriend, now wife. He was cordial and honest, and that he would wave to me in the hallway when we passed each other. Everyone should be nice like Todd. Todd Howard, you did it again. If you break up with someone like this, they will be okay. It just works. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 5. He is a high school financial literacy teacher at my daughter's high school. True story, when I was a freshman, he was a senior. He spread word around that he liked me and wanted to hang out. We got to know each other. He asked me to come home. I was so excited. We go to homecoming with another couple, and this D-wad ditches me at the dance for the girl from the other couple who went with us. It was all a setup. The guy was too scared to ask me out, so he had D-wad do it, and they set this whole thing up. In 2013 or so, D-wad found me on Facebook, sent a friend request, I accept, thinking, man, F this mother effing piece of crap. But I wonder what he's up to. A few weeks later, D-wad and another dude we went to school with asked me out for coffee to catch up. Cue the MLM pitch. They didn't want to catch up. They wanted to pitch me their Orwin Woodward cult couples financial freedom pyramid scheme. I was so effing mad. He got me again. Imagine my surprise when I learned that this piece of human excrement is a effing financial literacy teacher and his class is required to graduate. I've seen the guy in passing at parent-teacher conferences, and holy crap, he is visually massively uncomfortable. I know he knows who I am, and he knows what a piece of crap I think he is, and that he is a pyramid scheme shill. I cannot wait until parent-teacher conferences in fall of 2020. Like, I am counting down. I want him to have to sit across from me in a professional setting and explain his curriculum to me, and I have questions for him about his teaching. If you're seeing this, F you, Nick. Holy crap, we are starting off strong today. Since this was obviously a few years ago, I wonder how Nick held up. Then again, this was before school in 2020, so I think everyone involved probably had to deal with other things. Story 6. She died far too young. I taught hockey in Canada during summers off from high school. I am an American. And met her one summer day on a nearby beach. We fell in love immediately and wrote letters, actual letters, back and forth during the school year, and I would go back to teach again each summer until we graduated high school. Then we would visit each other for months at a time, as long as immigration would allow, for a few years, until one day I asked her to marry me. I never had a doubt that she was the one. I was just worried because I didn't feel like I could offer her much of a life until I realized I was the life she wanted. We shared the happiest years of our lives together until she told me she had been feeling sick and very tired no matter what she did. She died of cancer shortly after. She went so fast. It was like when you light the fuse on a firework, the brief spark she had was just snuffed out. I watched her life just disappear. I held her hand as she vanished into thin air. I still remember the smell of the cancer on her when I kissed her goodbye. I just wanted to pause the world so she could live her life. Then when we were all ready and it was time, she could go peacefully. It just doesn't work that way. I miss her every single day. I lost my heart that day. I wish it was me that died, but at the same time, I would hate myself for leaving her to feel like I do. I was so broken. I still am. I decided that day I could never love like that again. Wherever you are, Natalie, I love you. I haven't spoken of her to anyone in 8 years. Story 8. Recently I found out I was the high school crush of my high school crush. Oh, the chances we don't take. Until you ask, the answer is always no. And after you ask, a lot of the time the answer is still no. Sometimes it's you no. Story 9. I think he's married to his high school sweetheart. Meanwhile, I just choked on a Dorito. That sucks. I mean, if you choked on a Dorito, then I guess you didn't get to fully enjoy it. Maybe they enjoyed it twice. You never know. Story 10. 5 kids from 5 different guys. You dodged that bullet. I agree. I feel like Neo. Story 11. I just Googled her. Yeah, she's still hot. Did you then Tracy Jordan Google yourself? Story 12. Married, expecting her second kid. Safe to say she did better with romance than I did. Hey, that's okay, champ. Your username implies you're still trying, so that's good. I've given up. Reverse psychology, interesting tactics, but you'll never get my nudes. I gotta tell you, folks, I hear a lot of people in their 20s and early 30s talking about giving up on romance or whatever, and my people, I met my partner in my mid-30s, and my life is wonderful. I struggled for years with anxiety and a brain that hated me, but I worked on myself, and eventually things worked out. I don't look back at all those years without my partner and think, well, this isn't worth it because it took this long to find her. If anything, all of those years just led me to her, and it was worth every day I had to go through. I can't guarantee things will work out, but every day you try is another chance they will. Story 13. He's living with his boyfriend on the coast of California. No, I didn't know he was gay. Same here, but he's in Chicago now. Weird how things work out. Edited to add, no clue he was gay. It was high school, and we never did more than kiss/hold hands because we dated as freshmen and grew apart. We did go to a few dances together, and to this day, he's the best dance partner I've ever had. On or off Broadway. Story 14. These days, she spends most of her time in her grave. Story 16. She's married, 2 kids. I think she's a stay-at-home mom, but I'm not 100% sure on that. We were best friends from age 8, lived down the street from each other our whole lives. After high school, we fell out of touch, and although I've thought about her from time to time, I never look her up. About a year ago, her mom added me on Facebook, so I did a little light stalking, saw she was married with kids, and left well enough alone. Story 18. I'm just here hoping to find out I was someone's high school crush. Who knows? Maybe everyone's high school crush was you. Maybe I should find out by hanging out in my van outside of high schools every day. Well, with thinking like that, I can now confirm that you were and are nobody's crush. I would say that I'm sorry to break the news to you, but I'm not. Story 1. I used to be a bouncer at a nightclub that was part of a major hotel in San Francisco. People would get married and have their reception in the hotel and then head to the club after. One night, a couple 2 hours fresh from the altar and their party was in the club. They are sloshed, but the bride is beyond drunk and causing problems, stumbling into people, being too loud, and trying to cross the VIP rope that I'm guarding. Well, she gets across the rope, and while I'm trying to persuade her to go back to the other side, she starts grinding on me and saying, "You think you can handle me?" Her husband is about 3 feet away with his jaw on the floor. I asked him to control his wife, and he snapped out of his shock. He grabbed her wrist and dragged her out of the club, swearing up a storm. I still feel bad for the guy. Story 2. I used to work events at a high-end place that did conferences and wedding receptions. To give you an idea, 1 to 2 year waiting list for wedding receptions and cheapest plan/menu was $300 a head. Plus, being a hotel, the bride and groom stay in a room at night. Propositioned so many times. Once every staff member got handed a photo and it was not allowed to enter and to call security. It was the groom's mother. Apparently she hated the bride so much they put an AVO out on her. Took 3 police officers to get her into the police car. She bit one of the security staff. A bride so drunk they refused to allow her to sign the marriage certificate. The ceremony and reception went ahead, but the marriage officially happened the next day when sober. The best and most memorable, the bride's father was paying for the reception. The groom asked for a few projectors to be set up so that he could play a movie and photo montage of their relationship. All goes well for 5 minutes until it hits a scene of the bride being pounded by 2 guys, neither of which was the groom. One was the best man. Still to this day, don't know who the other guy was. During the video, the groom had left via a cab. One other time, the newlyweds had a cab called to the airport. We rang the room 30 minutes before the cab call as a courtesy, no answer. Manager goes to knock and no reply, so he uses the house key, and there's the couple sleeping in her wedding dress and him half in the suit, both covered in vomit. So many have tried. We are a honeymoon couple. Please give us freebies. There was a lot going on in that last one, and it reminds me of my days working for the best hotel in town. Not saying much, trust me. I've seen a lot of drunk grooms and brides, fights between family members, and whatnot. This post brought all that back to me. I recall one person being tackled by security and smashing through a glass table. Good times. Story 3. Content warning. Self-termination. To skip this story, click ahead 1 minute 30 seconds. I worked as a guest service agent/bellman at a nice hotel chain. One weekend during a wedding in one of our banquet rooms, I was befriended by a groomsman. Chubby little guy, very nice nonetheless. Participated in a few staged wedding shots around the hotel and whatnot. After getting to know them a little bit, I found the entire group of bridesmaids and groomsmen were very close. The chubby little guy was particularly close to the bride. I thought nothing of it. As their reception began later in the evening, I'm paged by the front desk to visit a room that had a call for distress. These pages are normally on a wild Saturday night. I grab security and go up to the said room. The groomsman that I had befriended earlier had tried to commit self-termination. He had ingested many pills and was laying in the tub half filled with water. The call for distress actually came from his mother, who was living in the same city, and she was the first person he called, informing he was going to end it. He had apparently backed out halfway. Long story short, we wheeled him out to the ambulance, and the bride and groom are there waiting for us in the lobby. As he's leaving with the crew, he tells the bride he's sorry and didn't want to self-terminate on the same day they were getting married, but he loved her too much to go on. They had a short exchange, and then he was whisked away. The bride was furious. Apparently, he handed her a letter of reasons why they were supposed to be together as well. All the while, the groom was just completely dumbfounded. He had no clue. One of the most ridiculous and awkward things I've seen at a wedding. Oh, the groomsman was fine. Made a full recovery. Not sure if they're still hanging out, though. Story 4. I worked overnight at a hotel, which pretty much involved me sitting at a desk watching twerk videos until the phone rang. A guy called to complain about room 114 because the guy was watching adult entertainment on full volume. This was the usual routine for me. Every Saturday, this guy would rent the same dang room and I'd get a noise complaint that he was watching adult entertainment too loud. I would go and bang on the door, no one would answer, and he'd settle down for a bit, then start back up. Then the phone would ring again with another complaint, and I'd have to comp the room for his unfortunate neighbor. Well, tonight, I was fed up. I kept banging and screamed, "I know you're in there! This is getting old! Open up!" After a few minutes, the door opened up to reveal a camera on a tripod, a naked woman in bed, and him, naked from the waist down, with a camera in hand. He told me he shoots adult entertainment here, and that's what the noise was. He asked me if I ever wanted to frick one of his girls. I said, no thanks. He offered me a $50 tip to continue to allow him to film at our facility because the last place kicked him out. For the rest of my time there, he got complimentary upgrades to our suites every Saturday. I had my suspicions at the start, and that sounds like a great compromise. Damn, wish I could have worked out a deal like that when I worked overnights at the hotel. I could have used the extra money, or the film time. Story 5. I was serving at a wedding a few years ago that probably fits in the most embarrassing category. It was the part of the reception where everyone gave a speech or a quick toast. When we were not serving, we were expected to line up a specific way, and I'm standing there facing the bridal party from across the room. The bride's mother gets up and does this very touching speech on how she wished Grandma had been able to see it and what a beautiful bride her daughter was. Then she pulls out this box and says she has something from Grandma. She pulls out this old doll, the kind with huge fluffy dress that people used to set on the bed as decoration. She hands it to the bride, who starts telling her guests how she's always loved this doll since she was a kid and she wondered what happened to it after Grandma died. So the photographer comes up to get a picture with her with the doll, and right as she poses, this little silver ball on a cord falls out of the bottom of the doll. At first I didn't know what it was, but the bride picked it up to look and immediately freaked out and dropped it, which set the crowd off. One of my coworkers had to explain to me it was a vibrating egg and it was probably Grandma's. To this day, I wonder what kind of photos, if any, the photographer caught at that moment. Story 6. Okay, so I work in a high-end, all-inclusive hotel in Southern California. Honeymooners often come here, and for many reasons, crap always seems to get really, really weird. Possibly because I know one of my coworkers sells Molly. So one night at like 3 a.m., we get a request for room service, and they want mustard, ketchup, and a bun. So to get this straight, they did not ask for a hot dog. Being that we were all about customer service, I go into the kitchen and get all of the items and bring it up to the room. I knock once, no answer. Twice, no answer. Then finally, after the third knock, I get an answer. I give them the mustard, ketchup, and bun on the plate, and the freaking dude rips off the top of it, grabs the bun, whips out his dong, and sticks it right in. The new wife grabs the ketchup and mustard and dumps it all over it. They both start hysterically laughing and close the door. I was at a loss for words for hours, so I guess they got me pretty good. There are a lot of very specific kinks out there in the world, and as obvious as this one might seem, it had never occurred to me. If it were me, I would have asked for a little sauerkraut. Gotta have the right toppings for a brat, you know what I mean? I hate myself sometimes. Story 7. A couple came into my camera shop during the old days of film and explained that they were honeymooning and were concerned that their roll of pictures of the honeymoon just kept going for some reason. Like way past the 36 frames. When I told them there was no film in the camera, the honeymoon ended right there for the poor bastard husband whose job it was to load the camera. If looks could kill. Story 9. The honeymoon suites were always the worst. There was never a real best. I guess the best of the worst was the room with the chocolate. The shower and jacuzzi were covered in it. Cleaning it was awful, but the chocolate butt print impossibly high up on the shower wall was pretty impressive. Story 10. I used to work at a Hilton hotel near Disney, and there was a newlywed couple that had come down from their room and said they had just gotten married and they were looking for the nearest topless bar. I'm confused as to how forward they were and why they would want to spend their wedding night at a topless bar. So I directed them down to a sleazy part of town and told them there were plenty down a specific road. Later, I was so shocked I told my coworker what had just happened and what they were looking for. He then called me an idiot and said they probably asked for a tapas bar. Well, crap. That was the first time I had heard of said place and never knew they existed or what they were called. Drive down Orange Blossom Trail in Orlando looking for a tapas bar. Going to have a bad time. That night, one guy who opened up a tapas bar in that neighborhood, his partner, had been yelling at him all week about how no one is ever going to want tapas in this neighborhood. His heart is breaking as he looks at the empty seats. He gets ready to close early when this couple steps in and gives him the hope he needed. That's a story I'm going to tell myself. Story 11. I'm in the evening maintenance at a resort, and we get a call that a room has a light bulb out. Cool, something to do. So I hop on my one-speed golf cart and make my way to the room with a light bulb in hand. I arrive at said room and knock on the door and announce, "Maintenance!" I hear a man say, "Come in!" So I grab my keycard, swipe myself in, lo and behold, the hairiest Russian dude and his smoking hot wife jumping from the bed, buttoning up their drawers wide-eyed as deer in the headlights. I 180, tractor beamed my eyeballs to the floor, apologized, and waited outside of the door. Harry the Russian opened the door, and instead of going to change the bulb, I said, "Here you go," just handed it to him and hightailed it out of there. After long thought, I came to the conclusion he had said, "coming," but I misheard behind all of his chest hair and his accent. Story 12. I live in Las Vegas, and I used to work in one of the major casinos on the Strip. One night in one of our clubs during a wedding reception, one of my employees let me know that he had heard multiple people in a bathroom stall. The stalls had full doors so you couldn't see feet, but you could definitely hear some debauchery going on. I called security, and they asked the people to open the door. So, out comes a groomsman, followed by the bride, followed by the best man, followed by the groom, all half naked. They proceeded to go right back to the reception like nothing had ever happened. I like that both the bride and the groom was involved. Story 13. I don't know why, but the maid decided to bust in 2 hours before checkout. Me and the woman were mid-doggy style, and she, not the maid, shot under the blanket so fast I was literally there with my dong in hand. I think we've all been there for this one. Except the maid was the girl's mom, and the girl was the girl's dog. I'm not sure what I just read. I didn't hit my stash early today, right? Nope, all good there. Okay, so this was just, what? Story 14. Sad alert. There was an anniversary at the lodge that I worked at for the couple's 50th. They had their whole family staying there for the big event. After the huge party, the not-so-newlywed bride had a heart attack and died mid-frick. Huge bummer for the husband, but maybe the best way to go? Wow, way to kill the mood. Story 15. I was in Mexico with my mother and sister as we were walking down an outdoor path in the resort. We saw a young girl crying and her boyfriend walking behind her frantically. They were both covered in cuts and bruises, surrounded by security and medical, and of course on their honeymoon. I asked one of the staff what happened. The girl was having intercourse on their balcony and fell off. Apparently not too high off the ground, but high enough to be beaten and shook up. Story 17. I'm currently on my honeymoon in Delhi, India, and we are from Northern Ireland, so we are not used to the diet. My new wife just vomited at the side of the road, and it's my birthday. Big lad, I'm a fellow Northern Irener who has been to Delhi. I assure you that you will be crapping all the way home at the very least. Your vomiting wife is the least of your worries when your ticket for the flight home may as well list your seat as the toilet in accordance with how long you are sat upon it. Good Lord, you folks need to broaden those palates and toughen up those tummies. A lifetime of eating like a cross between a college freshman and a permanently exhausted professional chef has steeled my stomach. Story 18. Not a honeymoon, but I do work at a resort. Approached the cabin door, knocked 3 times. Housekeeping! Didn't get any sort of reply, so I opened the door and walked into 2 people fricking with ball gags in their mouths. Just doggy style, not even on the bed, down on the floor, getting their liquid children all over the place. Story 19. I live on Maui and worked for a while at Enterprise Car Rental. Once I already had a new job lined up, I could get away with anything. This newlywed couple had an economy car reservation and wanted to upgrade to a Mustang convertible. It was supposed to be an extra $100 per day, which the guy could obviously not afford based on the look on his face when I told him. But I gave it to them anyway for free because there was sand in the front seat that I don't feel like vacuuming. They jumped up and down and hugged me and said I made their honeymoon. The feels. Story 20. In high school, I lived in a tourist town and worked at a video store. One night, a Mennonite couple came in and mentioned they were on their honeymoon. They rented Anne of Green Gables. Story 21. Got married in Hawaii, staying at a swanky resort. Late one afternoon, my wife was getting out of the shower and I had boxers on, lying in bed after a long day at the beach, when out of nowhere I hear the front door opening up. I thought it was my wife, she thought it was me, but in walks a couple with luggage and keycard in their hand asking what we are doing in their room. Needless to say, we were upgraded to an oceanfront suite for the rest of our stay due to the screw-up at the front desk. We were also given meals for the rest of our stay, and half our bill was also comped. The real question is, how do you make sure this happens on every vacation you go on? Hell, I'll let some strangers see me in my boxers if it gets me a room upgrade and free food. They can see me fully nude if that suite has a hot tub. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.